Hi guys, and welcome back to the home office. So today's little talk is going to be based around food labels and how to read them effectively. It can be quite a minefield for a lot of folks. A lot of information on food packaging these days, and this is just to help you try and zero in on some of the more important aspects and what might be able to help you going forward in terms of making better nutritional choices. So lots of things that we would find on food packaging these days. Obviously, we tend to get pictures of the food, the name of the food, and then we also tend to get a lot of further information based around what's actually in the product itself. So we should be looking for a full list of ingredients. That's usually listed from the highest constituent down. We obviously get our little nutritional panel, and we're going to refer back to that very shortly and how to read that effectively. You may get some information on additives and allergies that might be important to know about that product. We tend to get cooking guidelines, storage guidelines, defrosting guidelines, things like that, which again are important to adhere to make sure that the food is safe when we actually consume it. You will get some dates. So we tend to get a best before date. Remember, that doesn't mean that after that date that the food is not suitable to be eaten. It just means that it's better before that date. There are some tinned products, for example, that are truly airtight and will last an awful long time. Other dates you might see are things like a sell-by date, and that is for the shop themselves. So sell by or display on till, sometimes it's referred to, and that's for the shop themselves. That's when it has to be cleared off the shelves. And you'll often see foods that are coming up to that date offered low price to get them shipped out. You'll also get things like a use by date. Now that's a bit more significant, and we have to adhere to that a bit closer, because we tend to find that on products such as dairy products or perishable products, so meat and fish, things that are going to go off and might be detrimental to our health if we ate them after that time. Other things you might see are traffic light labeling, and again we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth shortly. And that's designed so that you can see at a glance whether foods are good, bad, or indifferent. But it's not always that easy. We need to look a little bit more carefully. You may get some nutritional claims or health claims. And these days, they have to be based on science, so people can't just make stuff up. But they can be quite inventive as to how they present certain bits of information. For example, I have a yogurt here, and as you can see, one of the first things that comes up there is 0% fat, which would obviously make that quite attractive to a lot of folks. Feed your inner happiness, it says. Now, what it fails to mention is the fact that the sugars are not high, but they're heading that way. They're certainly well into the sort of medium range. So the sugars are not low in here by any stretch of the imagination. So sometimes when you see 0% fat, especially on something like yogurt, just be careful about what other constituents are in here. And that's the purpose of this talk, really, is to turn you into a sort of food detective, so that you can have a look at the nutritional panel or the traffic light labeling and decipher for yourself whether that is a good food product. Let's not try to look too much at products that state things like only so many calories per biscuit or per packet. If you see that, then that should be an alarm bell going off straight away that perhaps that food is not the best quality and they're trying to perhaps pull the wool over your eyes a little bit. The other things I should say is traffic light labeling is not mandatory, it's not law. And some shops will come up with their own version of it, and their own version of it may reflect in lots of pastel colors. So you tend to see things like light blues and light greens. Even if the sugar levels or fat levels or salt levels are high, that will be labeled in blue or green. And obviously that's to appeal to to our sort of nature, where we think those are quite calming colours. Obviously, if everything was in bright purple or bright red, then it might sort of show up as a warning sign to us. So that's why they use those kinds of colours. So just be careful, because remember, a lot of these guys are producing food products that will taste very nice, but they may not be the best thing for your health. So they're quite inventive as to how they will develop packaging to appeal to your better nature. You may find that there's things like little bees flying around, or honey spoons with honey dripping off them, and especially in products like breakfast bars, where we tend to think that will be a healthy product, and it's often stored in around the health products. It doesn't mean it's healthy. We need to look a little bit deeper. So that's what we're going to do now. There's also some information that you might find on more environmental aspects. So for example, if it was fish, it might say whether it's sustainable. It may say how it was caught. You'll get information on place of origin, so you can make a decision on the food miles that have been involved there. And you can make more ethical decisions based on where the food came from or how it was caught. And that's important these days. We all have to make these sort of decisions and help the planet to an extent. Now then, we're going to move on to traffic light labelling. Now, you may see something like this. I've got a Tesco's quiche here. You have a little look down at the bottom there. We have some traffic light labelling. And it does look like this one actually does follow the normal traffic light labelling, which is a red, amber, green system. And it's not rocket science. Green would mean it's a healthy product, and that means that either the fat, the saturated fat, the salt, or the sugar levels are at a certain level per 100 grams, and that's the key here, guys. So instead of thinking about how many calories per biscuit, per packet, per product, let's start looking at whether the things that we're eating are good foodstuffs when we look at them as a whole product. Now, you'll rarely get all greens. You can sometimes get all reds with some particularly bad products. What we are after is really a mixture of ambers and greens. That's, for most products, that's as good as you're going to get. And if we can go with those sort of products and reduce the amount of reds, then we'll be in a better place. So a green would show a low level of fat, saturated fat, salt or sugar. Amber would be what they refer to as medium levels. We need to talk about that as well. And red would be high. Now, I am going to post up a little food decoder with this talk, which you can download and print off. It's going to look something like this. I'm just going to show this up to the camera. And as you see there, we have numbers per 100 grams. We have numbers equated to what means low, what means medium, and what means high for each of the constituents of fat, saturated fat, sugars, and salt. So if we're looking at fat, for example, 3 grams per 100 or less is what we term low. 3.1 grams to 17.5 grams is amber. Now you might be thinking, that's quite a range, Rob, and it is. So amber's actually, for me, is the most dangerous one because there's such a variance in there. So it's not good enough really just to look at the colour. We also have to look at the amount of grams that are in there. So for example, as I just said, medium is 3.1 to 17.5 for fat. There's a world of difference between 3.1 and 17.4, let's say. One is very, very close to being a healthy food, and one is just off being a very unhealthy food. But they would both carry the same colour. So, as I say, you must look at not just the colour, but how many grams of fat or saturates or sugars or salt that are in there. I hope that makes sense. So reds and greens are quite easy to decipher. Greens, you know that's good. Red, you know that's bad. You need to cut down on one and focus on the other. It's the ambers. There's a lot of ambiguity in there, and we need to sort of look a little bit deeper there. With saturated fat, 1.5 or less is considered healthy. This is again per 100 grams, and we're always looking at per 100 grams. So when you get your little nutritional panel, say for example on the back of this, it is law that it will be listed per 100 grams. Now it can be, they can list things per biscuit or per product, but they also have to list per 100 grams. That is law. That's what we're going to go by. Okay. So saturates 1.5 or less is considered low. 1.6 to 5 is considered medium, and more than 5 is considered high. You're going to have all this information on this little decoder, don't worry. Sugars, 5 grams or less is considered low. 5.1 to 22.5 is considered medium. And do you remember I mentioned the yogurt before? So the sugars in here are 12 grams. So they're well into the medium range, even though that's 0% fat. And more than 22.5 grams per 100 is considered high for sugar. For salt, we're talking much smaller quantities. 0.3 grams or less is considered low. 0.31 to 1.5 is considered medium, and more than 1.5 is considered high. Now I know there's a lot of figures in there and you're probably thinking I'm not going to remember them, and that's why I'm going to post this up with this talk, and then you can print that off. My advice would be start looking at some of the foods that are already in your house, and things that you would just buy automatically without really thinking about it, and just check how good or bad they are before you do your next shopping trip or your next online shop. And that will save you a lot of time, because the first time you go into the supermarket, then if we're doing this and trying to check everything, it might take you a fortnight. Now, shopping takes a bit longer at the minute, even at the best of times. And those coming behind you, waiting for you to move out of their particular square in Tesco or Aldi or Lidl, wherever it is you go, might be getting a bit annoyed. So let's start at home and check up on the foods that you would eat automatically, really without thinking about it, and just have a little look and see whether they're good for you, or whether you could potentially look for an alternative or cut them down a little bit, cut their use down a little bit. So what we really want to do going forward is to base your meals more on starchy carbohydrates, perhaps with a protein-rich source, white meat, fish, eggs, seafood, that sort of thing, and lots of vegetables as well. So fill your boots with your veg, and just be aware of health claims. Remember, any claim has to be based on science, but a lot of these guys are very careful about how they present their foods to you. One good thing about this, I should say, is it has pictures of strawberries on it. Now that means that actually has to have strawberries in it. So if that was using an artificial strawberry sort of substitute, then they would not be able to put pictures of strawberries on that. And again, be aware of things like this, perhaps, mayonnaise. Now that's the full fat job, but quite often you'll get a light variety of this. And if it says that, it has to be 30% lower. So one of the constituents, and for mayonnaise it would be fat, has to be 30% lower before they can actually tag that on as a light version. So I hope that helps. I will post the little food decoder up, as I say. If you have any problems, then please get in contact with me and I'll talk you through it. It is one of the more sort of complicated talks that we do. It sometimes takes people a little bit of time to get their head around this, but with a bit of practice you'll soon be able to start deciphering a little bit more about the foods that are on offer out there, and pick your way past the potholes. Anyway, you stay safe, guys, and we'll catch up with you soon. Bye bye.